Now available in paperback and coming to Kindle Unlimited. John Haynes, Dark Succubus. The man who rules the world is tempted by a sultry succubus in this all-new John Haynes series adventure. Get John Haynes, Dark Succubus in paperback or pre-order on Kindle Unlimited today. Yesterday, Officer Daniel Pantaleo, the man who choked out Eric Garner on video, was finally fired by the NYPD. And it seems like the NYPD took its own sweet time in firing Daniel Pantaleo, and your Mayor Bill de Blasio took his own sweet time in insisting that Daniel Pantaleo be fired from the NYPD. And when I take a critical examination of your Mayor Bill de Blasio, I see the passive aggressiveness in his leadership as related to this Eric Garner case, and his complete ineffectiveness in dealing with the Eric Garner case, because your Bill de Blasio passively said that he wanted to see the criminal justice system go through its process, and when I look at that action, it reeks of passive aggressiveness. Passively, he was giving your Loretta Lynch at the time the buck and kicking the can over to her, and aggressively what he was doing was looking to make her be the one responsible for prosecuting Eric Garner to absolve himself of any accountability. Unfortunately, what your Bill de Blasio didn't see what was going on was your Loretta Lynch was just a seat warmer in the Attorney General's office of the Obama administration, and what your Loretta Lynch, your first black female Attorney General, did was she just ran out the clock and left the Eric Garner case in limbo. And after the 2016 election and your Loretta Lynch left the U.S. Attorney General's office, and Jeff Sessions took over, Jeff Sessions really didn't have time to do anything about the Eric Garner case, if he was going to do anything, because I doubt he was going to do anything. And he then, after the start of the Trump administration and his resignation, then resigned and then kicked the can over to Attorney General Bob Barr. And your Bob Barr, after getting tired of kicking the can, decided to just come out and say he wasn't going to pursue any federal civil rights charges against your Daniel Pantaleo in the case of Eric Garner. And with that, we all understood that the criminal justice system was now the continuing criminal injustice system as related to black men and cases of police brutality. And we clearly saw the white supremacy between both of these political parties as related to holding white police officers accountable for the deaths of black men. And after playing political football and kicking the can, your Bob Barr then kicked the can right back down to your Bill de Blasio, and your Bill de Blasio managed to hem and haw for quite a while, not taking a serious stand on the death of Eric Garner, and made no serious efforts to get justice for Eric Garner, looking to flip-flop and waffle on the situation instead of taking an adamant stand on the case at all. And your Bill de Blasio, if he was so concerned about black people, like his wife and his biracial children, if he was concerned for his son's safety, the way your Barack Obama said he was concerned about Trayvon Martin, he would have taken action almost immediately after the death of Eric Garner. But your Bill de Blasio didn't do that because he just wanted to avoid having any sort of responsibility at all for holding bad police officers accountable. So he hemmed and hawed and then talked about how it had to go through a departmental trial and managed to keep this case going for months on end. And again, didn't want to really take an effective stand on bad police officers and police officers who participate in misconduct. Your Bill de Blasio sat there ineffectively, even once having the can once again, and when he got the recommendation, then decided to push the can back to his police commissioner. When in actuality, As the mayor of New York and the head of the executive branch of New York City, your Bill de Blasio could have solved this problem over 5 years ago. But your Bill de Blasio, because he did not have the courage to take a stand on police brutality, he just let bureaucracy do things and run through its course in an attempt to look fair, when in actuality, he was anything but fair. Again, he was participating in passive aggressive behavior, passively letting the criminal justice system go through its wheels, but then aggressively not doing anything because he was just too scared to take a stand and alienate people like the police unions and many of the white racist New Yorkers who really want to say that they are fine with Daniel Pantaleo's type of policing until it is their son or daughter who is victimized by Daniel Pantaleo or his type of policing. Because many of the racists out here, they're thinking that brutal cops only attack black people, not understanding brutal cops affect everybody, and all it takes is one bad cop to bring more crime to New York City, because they will go along and make excuses, because if you make excuses for one bad cop, you make excuses for all bad cops, and that's why a standard has to be maintained when officers like Daniel Pantaleo participate in excessive force, like using chokeholds. And your Daniel Pantaleo, clearly from the video, had engaged in a chokehold on Eric Garner, and he escalated a situation that could have been easily diffused. Now, your Eric Garner, from what I saw in the video, was no threat to any of those officers. Yes, he was loud. Yes, he was emotional. But he had no weapon on him, and he was not looking to get violent or aggressive. What he was doing was venting frustration, but your Daniel Pantaleo escalated things when he grabbed Garner behind the neck because he wanted to get this collar quickly, and that's not what a good officer does. A good officer understands, okay, this guy is frustrated. We're going to try to calm him down. And what's really sad is that there was supposed to be a black female supervisor on hand there, and she made no efforts to diffuse the situation as related to the officers in her charge, and she took no efforts to go out here and diffuse things so that this man could be processed through central booking and arrested in a way where he would remain safe. She didn't protect his safety, and she didn't do anything to supervise your Daniel Pantaleo effectively, and as a result, this is what led to the death of Eric Garner: ineffective leadership from that supervisor. And then after the death of Eric Garner, we got even further ineffective leadership from your Mayor Bill de Blasio, who refused to take a stand on clearly an officer who engaged in misconduct and holding him accountable. He was more afraid of police unions than he was of the public trust, and as a result, public trust between police officers and the black community and the overall New Yorkers has completely eroded because of his ineffective leadership in this situation. Had he gotten rid of this bad apple in the bunch, he would have been able to salvage the relationship between the NYPD and the mayor's office, and he would have been able to salvage the relationship between the NYPD and the black community and New Yorkers overall. But instead, he let this situation fester, he let this situation escalate, and he let it get worse instead of taking constructive action, where he started to file proceedings against Daniel Pantaleo almost immediately and demand for his termination. Because your Daniel Pantaleo, this is not his first time going out here and being in trouble with superior officers or with the NYPD overall. Your Daniel Pantaleo has had numerous cases against him, and as a result, he should have been terminated years ago. Unfortunately, your Daniel Pantaleo has managed to fall through the cracks of New York City Police Department bureaucracy, and as a result of him falling through those cracks, he finally did something so egregious he could not get away from it. But most of those brass should have taken care of him almost immediately after the first one or two lawsuits were filed against him and dealt with him constructively. But instead of doing that, what they did was allow him to remain on the job, and they allowed him to accrue over $500,000 in salary. That clearly shows the complete ineffectiveness of the de Blasio administration in taking charge as related to situations like this, and it shows how they just don't really understand how to lead in situations where you're dealing with corrupt police officers and dealing with officers who have a hard time taking supervision or participating in proper procedure. Your Daniel Pantaleo, again, should have been fired years ago, and it should have never escalated to the point where it took the death of Eric Garner for this man to be stripped of his badge and his gun. And what's clearly here is we have people who are behind the scenes enabling things and allowing this man to accrue over $500,000 in salary, over $500,000 overall of city taxpayer dollars, when there should have been action taken almost immediately. And I find it interesting that it takes 5 years to get Daniel Pantaleo's badge, but a recent black male police officer who was fired for shooting another man on a Bronx street over his girlfriend, he was already in the same situation as Daniel Pantaleo, where he was at risk of losing his job. The NYPD quickly fired the black man, but your Daniel Pantaleo, who was in the same situation, managed to keep his job for over 5 years. And if that doesn't show you the racism inside of many of these cities as related to government, as related to the politics, I don't know what will show you. The black officer is quickly fired after participating in misconduct where he shoots a black man over his girlfriend, but the man who choked out Eric Garner manages to keep his job for 5 years. And that's the most egregious thing here, is that we didn't get any justice from the criminal justice system, and it took nearly forever for us to see this bad officer terminated from the NYPD. Now, many of these same people, like Bill de Blasio, want to talk about how your Donald Trump is a racist, and they want to talk about how Donald Trump supports all sorts of hostile things as related to the mistreatment of people in places like these detention centers where these immigrants are. What they don't want to talk about is how black people are mistreated in many of these cities, and how these black American citizens have to deal with rogue officers like Daniel Pantaleo on the regular, and how we can't get any sort of recourse from those same politicians in these leftist areas. They want to talk about Donald Trump on the right when they're participating in the exact same thing on the left. And that's the most troubling thing about your Bill de Blasio. He wants to run for president talking about how bad Donald Trump is, but he can't see how bad he was as related to dealing with the situation as related to Eric Garner. And when I look at the whole situation with Eric Garner critically, it's one of those reasons why I would never vote for Bill de Blasio as president, because if he could not take an active lead in a situation where race relations and tensions were flaring up in New York City, then how could we trust someone like Bill de Blasio to run the entire United States of America? This man could not manage New York City effectively, so how can we trust him to run the entire United States of America, where we have enemies like North Korea, like Iran? Is he going to let things drag out for years after a strike, or if one of these countries attacks us? Is he going to wait 5 years to take a time to wait before he responds? If he's going to go and take that type of approach, then he shows us all how ineffective he is as a leader, how he cannot take responsibility as a leader, and why New York is going to crap under his leadership. So your Bill de Blasio just is not the right man to run New York City. And under his leadership in this Eric Garner situation, he shows how he just doesn't know how to handle things as related to rogue officers. Instead, he allows the rogue officer to make over $500,000 in 5 years' time, and that he's perfectly fine with that, and he's also perfectly fine with the Garner family not getting any sort of justice at all for the death of their son and this man's children. He's fine with that, and he doesn't really see where the ineffective leadership of New York is under him, because he enables bad people to continue to remain bad by sitting passively while the city aggressively and continuously declines under his ineffective leadership and the completely ineffective leadership of Andrew Cuomo. Both of them have been driving New York straight into the ground, and it's a shame that it took 5 years to get Daniel Pantaleo off the job when he should have been taken off the job right after the death of Eric Garner. If you'd like to see me make more videos like this, you can donate to my Patreon, my PayPal, or my Cash App by clicking the links in the description box. And if you want to try some of my SJS Direct publications, you may pick them up in paperback and Kindle formats by clicking the link to Amazon.com in the description box. That's all I have to say for this video. You can comment, rate, and subscribe.